In verse 7 it says, you husbands must also be careful of your wives. Be thoughtful to their needs. Honor them as the weaker sex. That expression wouldn't go down so well in some quarters today as the weaker sex. But yes, they are. They are given for a specific purpose that's different to us men. And then he says, remember that you and your wife are partners in receiving God's blessings. And if you don't treat her as you should, your prayers will not get ready answers. Husbands, if you're not treating your wife right, you're not getting an answer to prayer. Verse 8, now, this word to all of you, you should be like one big happy family, full of sympathy towards each other, loving one another with tender hearts and humble minds. Don't repay evil for evil. This is a family. Family. Don't snap back at those who say unkind things about you. Instead, pray for God's help for them. For we are to be kind to others. And then God will bless us for it. He's very, very simple here, is Peter. In verse 10, if you want to be happy, have a good life, then keep control of your tongue. Guard your lips. Oof, how important this is. Not just from telling lies, but it's the way you speak to people and about people. Turn away from evil, do good, try to live in peace, even amidst the chase after it, to catch and hold that peace. For the Lord is watching his children, listening to their prayers. But while he's listening to your prayers, he's against those of you who are not living right. Verse 13. Usually no one will hurt you for wanting to do good, but even if they should, you are to be envied, for God will reward you for it. And this is where we're seeing quite a lot of repetition here. Peter is speaking here very much about our being called to suffer when we're doing God's will, and we must be patient in it. And in verse 15, quietly trust yourself to Christ. And if anybody asks you about your belief, then be ready to tell them, answer them, and say why. Because you see, when the explanation is that we're doing it for Christ's sake, this is a powerful witness. Do what's right. Even if people speak against you, calling you evil, they will be ashamed themselves for falsely accusing you. And in verse 18, Christ also suffered. But remember, now when Peter is talking about this, remember one important thing, that Peter himself was crucified, but he was so in love with the Lord and so blessed by Jesus, he insisted that if they crucified him, he had to be crucified upside down, just to show that his suffering was the maximum. And so this is what he's talking about. And then he's talking about with Christ, his body died and his spirit lived on. And it was in that spirit that he visited the spirits in prison. You see, what we are touching on here, and we are touching on it briefly, is the fact that it does actually say that when Jesus rose from the dead, he actually went into the place where the departed spirits were and set them free. And also, if you read the Gospels, that some of the graves were opened and some of those that had died believing came back to life. So the whole of the gospel message is that there is life after death. And that part of the ministry of Jesus was actually to minister to the spirits of those who died in anticipation of the coming Messiah. And it speaks to them, those in verse 20, long before the days of Noah, because they had refused to listen to God, although God waited for them and called Noah, and Noah was building the ark as a witness and a testimony, yet out of all the people alive in the time of Noah, all of them, only 8 survived the flood. The whole world was destroyed, except for the 8. And then, as Peter goes on to say, he says, that is a picture of baptism. Noah and his wife and his sons and their wives were saved from drowning by the flood. And it's a picture, verse 22, this is a picture of what baptism is for us. Baptism, water baptism of the adult, not the child, water baptism of the adult shows us that we have been saved from death by the resurrection of Christ. So here, the ark is symbolic of Christ. Not, and going on in this, still looking at this verse here, not because our bodies are washed clean by the water, no, but because in being baptized, we're turning to God and asking Him to cleanse our hearts from sin. And now Christ is in heaven, sitting in the place of honor next to God the Father. And I find this next little bit very, very interesting. He says, with all the angels and powers of heaven bowing before Him and obeying Him. So because of the obedience and faithfulness of Christ, of Jesus, He was given a place of honor in heaven. Now that honor was earned by His life and His suffering. Look, what a challenge, and I've never seen it quite like this before. What a challenge to us as Christians that even Jesus Himself had to earn that place in the kingdom, so that when He rose from the dead and joined His Father sitting in a place of honor next to God the Father, all the angels and all the powers of heaven were obeying Him, Jesus. And that, in a way, is a small picture of the reward that we will get if we live the right life, even to the extent of suffering. There will come a day when we receive honor in the presence of God. And in chapter 4 it continues this. Since Christ suffered and underwent pain, we must have the same attitude that He had. Did you notice the word attitude? And this is why I like this Living Bible. It puts it differently to the Authorized. It's simply, Christ suffered and underwent pain. You must have the same attitude. You must be ready to suffer. For remember, when your body suffers, sin loses its power. And you won't be spending the rest of your life, this is chapter 4, verse 2, you won't spending the rest of your life chasing after evil desires.